Karen the Warp Spinster here. Welcome to my channel where we toss out fabric we're not going to use. Welcome to my channel where we cut and sew and see what happens. I am glad and grateful that you are here. Today I have been doing marathon sessions on the quilting machine for the last couple of days, so I want to just sit down and play with fabric today. So you see before you things that are left over from piecing Greco Deco, which I'll show here for a minute. I just got it finished quilting it last night and it's ready for facing now. And I do have some leftover pieces that I want to make into something. So I think I'm going to continue with extra pieces that I have from that, plus these leftover bits and bobs of things. I even have some tiny things that I think are even a little bit pieced here that can be added into other things. Oh, that's kind of an interesting piece. Huh. Cool. So let's see what we can do with these. We're just going to play today. There's not going to be anything earth-shaking. There's never anything earth-shaking in my videos, but you know what I mean. It's not like, oh, I've thought of this cool new technique I'm going to do. I just want to fiddle with, I guess, kind of small pieces today, which I'm surprised I'm saying, but let's see what happens. All right, got lots of little pieces here, lots off to the side. The iron is already, which clearly I'm going to need. I've got some Creo brew at hand, not close to where I can spill it on the fabric, because if I can, I will. And I've even had a little piece of chocolate this morning. So I'm ready to go. And I want to start with these small pieces and build larger pieces that I can then start fitting together. And when I fit things together, I'm going to be inserting little bits here and there. Such as I did here. This is, I keep pulling this one out. I need to press it. I don't know that I want that white on the end, but this piece is very nice. And so insert little bits here and there at odd angles and doing interesting things. It's a good way to pop a little bit of color into it. In Greco Deco, I have, isn't this a lovely, it's a hand-dyed piece, and it looks like suede. It's just wonderful. I've got some pinks in there and then just a couple pops of green. And I popped a little bit of the dark pink or the magenta over on the right-hand side there just to kind of pull the colors together a little more. Anyway, so that's all we're going to do. If I've got an expanse of something like I do here, I might insert some pieces there, might cut an angle and put something else in here, we'll see. But this piece is kind of fun. This one, these two are the ones I'm going to start with. And I'm going to just cut off that white. I can save that white piece, but I know I don't want it with this. And I'll want to introduce some other colors in here at some point. This is a nice curve that I can use as a piece. What I really want to do is take pieces that have some shape already because of what I did before. Pardon me while I just paw through this pile here. And the curves or whatever shapes can be inspiration for adding things onto it. This might be a good place to splice in some pinks maybe. And I've got other pinks here. When I'm doing small pieces, I want to use something like this. I would save this suede looking hand dye for a larger piece where you can really see that texture in there. So let's start by just, and you know, this is improv. I may decide I hate it and we'll just work on another piece instead. Discard that or add more to it until I like it. So I don't want to do one, it's just me, but I don't want to do one that's sort of parallel in this direction to these seams. So I'm going to cross cut it a bit here. And I'm either going to do just one or I'm going to do 3. If you know me, have been watching my videos, you'll understand that. Those aren't all necessarily going to be pink. I might want to toss in some of this green, although those 2 greens have, oh, I could even toss in sort of that shape in there, which then I would need to recut that curve, but that's kind of fun. If we do this, maybe, not at the moment though. All right, I'm just going to, let's do a green strip in there. And I'll take this green, cut just a narrow strip. When I'm doing at least the, what I have from Greco Deco are narrow splices in there, just pops. And I think I want to continue to do that because I've already got some pieces where I'm doing that. It doesn't mean that I won't do wider things. It's just that as I'm building these pieces, I'm going to try and keep things narrow. So probably the widest I would cut would be 1 inch, which will give me a 1/2 inch strip, but that's too much, too wide for what I'm seeing in my brain. So I'm going to cut it at 3/4 of an inch, which once I do the seams will be 1/2 an inch finished. And then the same here. And my preference, I might even make this a little narrower. My preference would be to press these to the darker, which I will do, but I may have to trim both of the seams a little bit after I sew them so that when they fold in, they aren't messing with each other and creating too much bulk. I don't want it to be too narrow because then the seams will flip when I go to do the quilting, and that's kind of a pain. I mean, you can press it really well, but sometimes it still flips when I load it onto the machine. So let me stitch these in and we'll come back. All right, obviously I would trim that. And by the way, this is not intended in any way, shape, or form to be a class on improv. It is not that. First of all, I'm not really qualified to teach improv. Let's say that I'm not experienced at all, but I don't have the experience that some do. Greco Deco was something I began in a class from Sheila Frampton Cooper, who's an excellent teacher of improv. So I encourage you to look into that for more detail about how to design these and put them together and et cetera, et cetera. I'm just playing today. So one thing I could do is to follow this curve, put these 2 pieces together and follow that curve. Not sure I'm wild about that. I'm thinking that I might like to do a different blue, sort of this seafoam color might be nice. And I can stick to this curve or make it a more, even single curve instead of sort of an S curve that's going on here. So, although the S curve might be kind of interesting, let's trim this so at least it's a curve I could follow. I apologize ahead of time if I'm getting my elbow in your face at any point. It is not my wish, it is just what happens. That's looking kind of funky to me. I really think I would rather, and I don't mind funky, but this piece with this quilt, I would rather have it be a little more regular, I guess. So I can just keep playing till I like the curve. And then I will do curves, and I'll put a link in the description below for how I do my curves. This is barely a curve. This piece actually may come off. So I want that funky little thing there, and I'm not going to worry about this side yet at all. I am going to give myself plenty there. And this is a method where I am not doing seam allowance, because that would involve measuring and all that stuff I don't feel like doing today. So I'm going to mark where, let's see, I prefer to have the concave up, so I'm going to mark up here, and not at the very end, because then if I do it at the end, then I have to figure out what the angle is that the dog ear needs to make there. Don't want to do it. So this is hardly a curve, so that's not going to be a problem at all. I've left room here so that I can add in other things, and in fact, I could add something in here, but I would like something that breaks up this space before I start putting other things in here. So I think this is just going to be a narrow kind of joining piece. I don't know what I'm going to join it to yet, but you know. So let me sew the curve first, and then I can decide what I want to do from there. And I may, build for a while and then find something else and end up putting those pieces together. I don't have to just keep building on one thing. I can, but I don't think my brain is there right now today. So I'm just going to do disparate pieces and then maybe put some of them together. All right, I have this piece I just created that started out as this. I added in this triangular piece, then I added on, this was a dark blue triangle, added that on, and then cut an S curve. And I'm thinking I might want to put those together, and this is going to happen. I put some work into splicing that in, but it's all right. I'm going to like the shape that comes out, and then this is probably going to end up curving. I probably, before I put this on, want to add something down here so I don't lose this. I could also do this, but then I'm running that together too much. So I'm going to add something down here. Not sure what it's going to be. I am going to trim this because it is, having all of that extra on there is affecting how my brain is translating what that's going to look like. So I want to trim it down. It might be narrower than that. It might end up being the right width there. So all I'm doing is just playing with pieces, putting them together. The extra pieces that I have on the board, let me grab a couple. This one and this one, I love these pieces, but they didn't fit in with what I wanted to do on that quilt. So that may happen with these pieces as well. This one actually, I did put together. These were individual pieces that I had left over, and I had started putting pieces together. So it's just playing. All right, so I'm going to add a piece on here. Might be a pink. What do I have for pinks? What do I have for pinks? I have a lighter pink here. I have lots of lighter pink here. So, and sometimes I would use a more limited palette, but because I already have this palette started, I'm going to continue with it. On the extra pieces, yes, I do have different pinks. What do I have? Oh, I do have a darker green too. That'd be kind of fun. And I don't have to use all the colors in all the pieces. So I might put that on here. That will make it narrower over here. I'm okay with that. So I'm going to add this piece on, and then we'll come back and cut the line for that. I don't know what it's going to look like. Well, I have some idea of what it's going to look like, but we shall see. Oh, and by the way, I think I might have said when I was sewing that curve that I prefer the concave. I meant that I prefer the convex to be on top when I'm doing them. You probably, if you have followed me, you probably caught that before I did. All right, so we'll see how this goes. All right, I have this finished. Obviously, that will need to have some curving done on it. It gave me this piece, which was cut from here, and I could add that back in here, which I think would be kind of fun, or I could put that into that curve up there. Now, when I do improv piecing, I like straight lines as well as curves. In fact, I think I tend to do more straight lines than curves. Not that I mind curves, obviously. I like doing them, but I'm not sure how I feel about that being added in there. If I put it down here. No. Cut that off, Karen. You know you're not going to have those sticking out on a final piece anyway. So I could put that here. That's kind of interesting. I do want to start adding back in some more blue because the blue is my main color. So, I don't know. I think I'm going to save that for another place. I don't know. It could go in here. Lots of choices. That's the thing. We got lots of choices. All right, first thing I'm going to do is to cut this into a curve so that I can sew it, actually. And I could put some more white over there. I happen to like a pure bright white. Some folks prefer a warmer white or a off-white cream sort of color or more color. I happen to like bright white as a background. You probably have seen that in me. I'm also doing a very cool, very light gray, which I think would be kind of nice too. And I can use that as, again, like a joining strip, or I could make a larger piece and add that onto it. What if I were to, okay, now I'm mixing, this is, I don't know if the camera shows it, but this is a very light gray. This is white. Nope. I think I need more blue, so I might do a blue piece over here. Do I have, oh, let me look at what I already have on the board. So I have a fan-shaped piece that I could add in, or even put it this way. Obviously add something more up there. What I might do, I've got some strips here. Oh, I do want to add in some gray as well. I like bright white and gray. I tend more toward the cool colors than the warm colors. I tend to use warm colors as the pop. So we've got this. we could put in with the blue as being the major piece of it. Here's some more of this wonderful hand-dyed stuff that looks like suede. I just love it. All right, what blue do I want to use? How about I could do a darker teal seafoamy thing. It's a little bit darker than that. If I did that, I think I would want a white or something to break up these two. They're very close, and visually they probably would just melt together, which wouldn't necessarily be bad. So I think what I'll do is take a chunk of this and start piecing other things to it. Just do maybe some basic strips that have splices through it, or just make the strips into splices. I've got all kinds of stuff here that I can use. Oh, I could even put a little curved piece in there. What I am trying to do is use up some of these scraps. The nature of scraps means, of course, that I will never use them up because they clone in the closet, but I can at least make use of some of them. I didn't like these two greens on there. It's just not enough contrast. That's not so bad, but I just didn't want to have both of those on there, or that duller, darker color, because that makes it dull, and I want this to be brighter. So I might think about putting in strips, not necessarily those widths, kind of like that curve in there. And I may, in fact, piece something else here. So maybe I'll have some white that goes to here, and then move these strips down. I don't want any huge chunks, but I don't want all tiny pieces either, because I want some contrasting scale. So some larger pieces and some smaller pieces. It gives the eye kind of a place to rest. When there's all of this going on, it likes to just kind of settle in a place, and then it can go back and take in some more of the, I don't want to say turmoil, but the movement and excitement going on. So I'm going to do some playing around with this, just putting it together. This is nothing magical. It's just putting pieces together. Just wanted to do a quick share for how I match up the seams here. I fold back one of the other side of it to 1/4 of an inch, and then I lay the edge down with that folded back and just shift it back and forth until it's at the right spot. And I kind of hold on to it, turn it back, and then I just stitch across that section just to test it before I stitch the whole seam, and then I go back and finish the seam. You probably have a better and easier way to do that, and if so, I would love for you to share that in the comments for all of us to learn. How do I feel about that wide of the white? I don't know how I'm feeling about this whole thing in general, to be honest with you. So what I may do is leave this as a piece and keep this as a piece, because they may turn out to work better with other pieces. I'm also having to remind myself that I'm not trying to recreate another in a series like Greco Deco. This is a separate piece. Doesn't have to look like Greco Deco except for the colors and the fact that it's improv. So I have to keep reminding me of that. I was working on Greco Deco for so long that I'm having trouble getting my brain onto something else. Now, I wanted some white in here. And another thing that I sometimes like to do is and I have a piece like this in Greco, is to put a strip through the blue and then add on this second piece, put a strip through those two, add on the third piece, and then splice a strip across all three so that I get a sort of graduated look across there. I like doing that. It's kind of an interesting look. All right, so we're going to keep these as separate pieces. This is left over from before. This is a piece I've created, and I will just trust that at some point my brain will kick in and I'll say, oh, the proper place for that is right here, or I need to add something there, or whatever. So that's a pretty wide piece. I think I'll make this one just a really narrow splice through here. And I might even, I don't always like to do this, but I think I might even make these splices parallel to each other. So I'll splice this in, then I'm going to trim this so it's much narrower, and then I'll decide what to do up there. I decided that I want to play with this curve and this, but I want to preserve all of that curve. So I'm going to sew this on here. I've got plenty over there. And I'll be able to trim that off there. And then I can add this curve in, which will give me a piece here. And then I can, do I want to do that? I don't think so. All right, I changed my mind. But I'm going to add one more splice in here. And I might just make it this color of blue. Let me see what else I've got here. I've got a paler version, but not white. So I might do that. Put another splice in there, probably pretty close to that. This leaves this open to do something else up there. Let me trim off that selvage. And it will be the start of a piece. So it's not a bad idea, I find it useful anyway, to have some pieces that you know more can be done with them, but you aren't quite sure what that is yet, especially when you're going to be putting together different pieces. It's nice to have some options for what else you might add on to that. So I'm going to go ahead and splice a strip in there. And then this one may be finished for the time being. It might end up getting cut off here, might be an angle, there might be a curve. I just don't know yet. But I'll put another piece in here. Maybe I'll put 3 more in so that I'll have 5, and I've got a really spliced section here, which I think could be useful. Could even be, you know, a curve cut into it and made 2 different pieces later on. So I'm going to splice in 3 more. Remember, I want to do odd numbers, so I would either do 1 or 3, but I'm going to do 5. So I'll do 5 narrow ones, maybe even a little narrower than that. Just make them sort of hairline splices. This is finished. I'm pretty happy with it. It may get something done to it later, but I sort of put a gentle curve in it, and that was easy to do without cutting a curve because these are very narrow strips so that you can curve them gently. And I always sewed in this direction, which is going to naturally make it want to bow. If I had wanted these to be straighter, then I could have sewn first in that direction and just alternate the direction, and that will straighten out that natural bow. Okay, so I'm liking that piece. We've got this piece, which is pretty funky. You gotta admit, that's a pretty funky piece. This one's a little more versatile at this point. And I think I want to do something that's just strips, not even parallel strips, but just stacking strips, and see how that goes. This one this is the only pop of color, and in the next one I think I want to put in a strip or 2 that pops, some of that pink or magenta or something. I started stacking these, and then I decided I want a little bit of magenta in there. I just happen to have a piece this length and width, which is exactly what I want. That doesn't happen often, so it seems like a sign. Now, I do not necessarily have to line these up again. I could. Here's another way to do it, by the way, is to just fold this back 1/4 inch. If you're pretty good at eyeing 1/4 inch, and then slide it as you need to. So that's probably quicker than what I do, but I still do the seam across just that, where the seam meets it, so that I'm not having to rip out the whole seam if I don't get it right. I think I might want to offset those a little bit just for some interest. So let me splice. This is the effect you get when you splice things in and then add more on top. And I think I want to do this a couple more times, maybe with different pinks. And so I've got these two that are plain. The next one will have just one splice through it, or just through one of them. Do I want to do, well, maybe I could use these greens. It needs to be a lighter green if I do that. Or different pinks. I think I'll do different pinks. All right. So I will just continue stacking, and every once in a while I'll splice something through it. So here is this piece, which may be finished, may not. Maybe I want to make this very long and add some more onto the stack, you know, which I'm almost inclined to do here. Maybe pop in another green. This is pretty dark on the screen. It's just a very dark olive green. The thing about this kind of, I don't want to say simple piecing, but it's not challenging in terms of construction. You could make an entire quilt just out of this kind of block. You could make one out of just this kind of block or this kind of block. You don't have to be adding in pieces like this, although you certainly could. I'm not sure I'm going to be doing that on this piece, for example. That's quite a lot going on, isn't it? Wow. So you've got all kinds of choices, and sometimes you just want to sit down and sew stuff together. And this is one way to do it, and then you're building pieces that can later be put together into an improv piece. So it's got some thought to it, some construction and balance kinds of things, but it's also not as mentally taxing as it can be to do more complex pieces. So that's just kind of the day that I was having today, and that's going to be it for this video today. I may do some more pieces, in which case I will post them at the end of the video. But that's going to be it for my improv-y stuff today. Hope you found something you might try with all of those scraps and strips that you have floating around. Next week, maybe I'll do some more of this. Maybe I'll have an update for you on the George's Park piece. I don't think I showed you this before, but I did finish the quilting on Motorcycle Muma, which was an applique piecing piece. I still have to tie in the loose ends and do the face trimming and facing, but the quilting is finished. In fact, as soon as I finished that, I did Greco Deco, and now Betty's frame is empty. So I'll have to decide which piece is going on next, but I want to take a break to do some piecing before I do any other quilting. My feet kind of saying, yeah, let's take a little break. So I hope to see you next week, whatever it is we do. In the meantime, be well, be safe, Be happy, be quilting. Peace out.